It's big, it's fast. It's the Nikon D6. It is the biggest, baddest Nikon DSLR that I have ever used. Let's talk about it. For one, this is the successor to the Nikon D5. And while Raymond and I think mirrorless is the future, Nikon probably wanted to get the fastest camera that they know how to make in the hands of photographers for the Olympics. And, no Olympics this year. Would there have been a D6 if this were not originally an Olympic year? I don't know the answer to that, but I have my suspicions. One thing that Nikon does always have is a flagship. For us, it's the Nikon Z7, but the D6 is a different animal. Rather than a first-generation full-frame mirrorless camera like the Z7, the D6 is a sixth-generation DSLR designed for sports and action and certainly well-suited for other types of photography, as long as you're willing to carry it. I was willing to carry it for a week. I rented one with full confidence that I have enough f-mount lenses back there to make the rental worthwhile and capable in a variety of situations. I know there's a lot of curiosity about the D6 among many of you, and as the old saying goes, where there's curiosity, there's a Snapchick video. At least I think that's an old saying, or maybe not. Regardless, the D6 arrived. I'm going to put some specs up on the screen right now. I won't hit all of them in this review, but I will discuss how the usability of the camera and some of the important specifications contributed to my time with this camera. Now, one thing that this big brick of a camera tells you right away, this isn't a camera for the shelf. It doesn't want to get dusty. It wants to get out there and stretch its legs. So, the morning after it arrived, Raymond, who doesn't want to get dusty either, helped me out by sprinting by on his bike many times with me at the wheel of the D6. There's no actual steering wheel on the D6, but you basically have everything but a steering wheel on the back of this camera. And there's also function buttons on the front and configuration options in the menu, the depth of which I have not seen on any other Nikon camera, or really any camera. There's a lot of real estate on the back of this camera, and Nikon takes full advantage, including a touchscreen that can be used for the menus and when you're in live view to choose a focus area. Before I move on, members, make sure to check out the link below because I do have a longer video for you where Raymond and I discuss our experience with this camera a little bit more.
Would you personally spend $6,500 on this camera?
No.
Would you spend $6,000 on this camera?
No.
$5,000?
No.
$4,000?
No.
$3,000?
If you are not a member, I will put a link in the description to learn more about channel membership. So I photographed Raymond, I videoed Raymond in 4K, and it all worked exactly as expected. It was fast, it was heavy, it was loud, and I got the shots. The D6 definitely was a presence in more ways than one, and some of that's good, but it also frustrated me a bit. Let's talk about something good. The D6 is designed to shoot fast for basically as long as you need it to. The buffer is as deep as the ocean, as long as the ocean is 200 JPEG frames. And 14 frames per second goes and goes and goes, and the buffer clears very quickly so that you can get back on that shutter release button. Because I know many of you shoot RAW, here's a demonstration for you, shooting in RAW to an XQD card to get an idea of the speed and buffer. I think we can be done here. Frankly, it was overkill for a single cyclist isolated in the frame. I even took it out into the wild to capture some wildlife and see what I thought about it there. This is a sequence of still images that is nearly a 15 frames per second video at nearly 21 megapixels. But the camera sure was loud when it was doing it. Like I said, the camera has a presence. Now, all of that presence can work against you. It is a heavy camera. Pair it with a heavy lens, and you have a very heavy setup. I'm no stranger to hiking around with big telephoto lenses, but I do like to shave weight where I can, and this tank of a DSLR did not help me there. Now, this is a DSLR. I expected the heaviness and the loud shutter, but having used mirrorless more often than DSLRs in recent years, it was jarring. The noise legitimately came into play when photographing bunnies and coyotes in the quiet time just before dawn. When I took a few photos, the bunnies and jackrabbits I was photographing were hearing the shutter and making a break for it, where they would not when I was using a quieter camera. I came away with fewer photos. With the Z7, Z6, Z50, and the upcoming Z5, and of course many other mirrorless cameras out there, you have a quieter shutter and can even go fully silent electronic shutter. I will discuss how you can make the D6 quieter in a moment, but because I like to fade into the background and allow the animals to do their animal things while I watch and wait for my moment, the noise of a DSLR is just not acceptable to me anymore. So there is a way to make the camera quieter. It does have a silent shutter mode, but you need to be in live view. And hands down, the D6 has the best live view on a DSLR that I have ever used. Like the D780 that I reviewed recently, its live view mode basically turns it into a mirrorless camera, albeit just on the rear screen and not on the optical viewfinder. You can shoot 4K video and use autofocus tracking, though then you have to deal with lens noise. Go! I used my Nikon DSLRs to film my videos for years and years and years. I used manual focus and I stayed in one place and I made sure not to move. But now I have different standards, and that noise renders a camera obnoxious to use for video if I want sound associated with it. So you do have options in live view that you don't in regular viewfinder shooting, but you do have to hold the camera out in front of you where you have the least support if you're shooting handheld. And in any case, I can't do this for very long, or you'll need to use a tripod or monopod. Now, the noise and the weight of this camera is something that every prospective D6 buyer is probably already aware of. You don't buy the D6 because it's a small camera or because you can be sneaky with it. You buy a D6 because you know what it is and you have photography needs that it will deliver on, namely fast action, fast response, and anything else with the word fast in it. There is no ignoring its speed when it comes to frames per second and its ridiculously rapid capability of acquiring and keeping focus. Even in the early hours when it was still dim, the camera never struggled to autofocus quickly, not once. That being said, I would be remiss not to mention that the Sony Alpha 9 and Alpha 9 Mark II is smaller. We'll shoot 20 frames per second very quietly with more autofocus options and a better spread of focus points across the frame. Of course, if you're looking at a D6, I would imagine that there's something objectionable to you about mirrorless cameras, or you want to utilize the deep F-mount collection that you have. So it doesn't really matter to you what else is on the market. So I'm going to leave the comparison there. Back to the D6. Let's talk more about usability with customizing how the camera works. A week wasn't nearly long enough to work through all of the customization options. These customization menus really show you what's possible, and it doesn't end there. You can even customize your own autofocus point groupings. It seemed like almost any way Raymond and I could dream up to configure the camera was well within the realm of possibility. Raymond's and my heritage with Nikon is owning cameras like the D2X, D300S, D500, D800, D810, and we've owned or used many others like the D780 or the D850. So we're very familiar with the basics of Nikon's professionally oriented cameras, while seeing plenty of new material here in the menus. The D6 really is the DSLR and what I believe to be its final evolution. Nikon has put its heritage into this camera. As the f6 was Nikon's final great and most capable film SLR produced, I see some commonality here with the D6. From the D1 series to the D6, you could see the evolution of features like the proven dynamic area autofocus, frames per second increasing through the generations, ergonomics always being tweaked and tuned, and the menus growing and growing. Not to confuse you, but rather to accommodate entirely different ways of setting up and using the camera. If this is it, if this is the last flagship DSLR from Nikon, this is quite a beast to go out with. As with the D780, if you're a Nikon shooter with a legacy of Nikon lenses, perhaps even dozens of them, this is a camera that will take those f-mount lenses, give you the proven and highly evolved DSLR capabilities while adding cross-type autofocus points, some face and even eye detect autofocus options. This is a camera to consider. If you think mirrorless is the way forward, but you still believe in the DSLR, this is the baddest cam in the whole darn town. Of course, I'm not going to tell you to buy a D6. I'm not going to buy one, but if you are buying a D6, you already know who you are. So why this video? Why did I rent it? It's back to that word from earlier, curiosity. How did the curiosity wind up overall? It is what we expected. It certainly has some neat and very useful tricks up its sleeve, and fans of the big full-size Pro DSLR body, all of your boxes are checked. We had to say goodbye to ours. We certainly liked it, but there's no love affairs here. This is just a straightforward and honest camera, pros and cons alike. Questions? We're happy to address those down in the comments. Remember, for those interested in hearing me expand on my own comments in this video, we do have the longer form video for channel members, and there's a link down below if you'd like to learn more about channel membership. So, thank you for watching, and make sure you're subscribed because more gear reviews and photography in general related videos are coming up very soon.